A very warm welcome to you all. Our guest tonight is Cordelia Murday. She is a naturopathic doctor, and during this episode, Cordelia is going to explain to us about what inflammation is and gut health and the relation between the two. Cordelia, thank you so much for joining us in the studio of the MBC.
Thank you, Koyal, for having me today. So I'm going to talk about naturopathy. It's about a holistic approach to wellness. It supports a person to live a healthy lifestyle.
Cordelia, like you've mentioned, naturopathy is a form of healthcare that combines modern treatment with traditional methods. Explain to us more. How would you define naturopathy?
Naturopathy is, I'll give you an example. If somebody is having a headache, we don't just look at the symptoms. What we look at things like underlying causes, like why did this person get a headache? So in retrospective, this is what naturopathy is. It's getting to the root cause of a problem.
So we focus more on the prevention rather than cure. Can we say that?
Correct. That's very good. Because, you have to look at a person as a whole rather than just their symptoms.
Okay. And how did you develop the interest in natural medicine, and when did you know you wanted to be a naturopathic doctor?
That's a very good question, Koyal. I wanted to become a naturopath because it was something to do with my health. I was working in the corporate world, always not feeling good, being stressed, and a lot of people will relate to that. You working 9 to 5, you go home, you're still working on your computer, and this was affecting my health. So I wanted to change something, and like any naturopath will tell you, their health has been the determining point of them becoming a naturopath. And also, the conventional medicine was not giving me the answer that I needed. So I needed to find something more natural to help me. And that's why I became a naturopath. I was also a herbalist before I became a naturopath. So a herbalist will use things like herbs in order to treat a person. And I saw that the herbs was really good to my body, so I used it a lot. And I became a naturopath when I went to Australia. And after that, I decided to specialize into immunology and gastroenterology.
Okay. And Cordelia, how would you explain to us the difference between naturopathy and homeopathy?
Okay, naturopathy and homeopathy they link, but except that under homeopathic medicine, you use different drops. So you're giving in dosage, like little dosage of medicine, like a dropper bottle. You use a dropper bottle, and then you will increase it to maybe 2, 3. It can be given to babies. It can be given to elderly people. Naturopathy is a combination of medicine plus nutrition. So when we combine all of them, it works well for somebody. So I've studied naturopathy and homeopathy as well. So I like to combine both in my clinic so that I can help support somebody's body. You can add herbalism in it, you can add nutrition in it, and it makes a bigger picture of natural medicine.
Okay. And Cordelia, today's talk is based on inflammation and gut health. Inflammation happens to everyone, whether we know it or not. Explain to us what is inflammation.
Okay, inflammation is when your body is trying to heal itself. We create inflammation. Things like, let's say, for example, it will create a redness when you burn yourself, for example. Or if you cut yourself, there will be a cut, there will be bruises, there will be pain. And I want to talk a bit about acute inflammation and chronic inflammation, but I want to emphasize a bit more on chronic inflammation. So acute inflammation will be like a fever. You don't have fever all the time. You have fever maybe for 3 days, for a week. You don't have a cut that keeps bleeding all the time. So it heals itself. So that's acute inflammation. And inflammation is important because it helps our body fight infection. It helps our body fight toxins and other attacks that our body is getting. And our immune system works really well to defend our body from inflammation.
You've mentioned about chronic inflammation. Tell us what are the causes of chronic inflammation and what is it exactly?
Yes, chronic inflammation is, imagine for a minute, you've got a fire in your body and it's the fire that's grown into a volcano, for example. It's about to erupt. That's chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation causes pain, causes a lot of imbalance in our body, but we don't see it. It's something that's staying dormant, kind of, and then all of a sudden it will erupt because the fire has grown up to become a really big fire. I have to say that doctors are good at treating acute inflammation, but when it comes to chronic inflammation, this is where we lack in the conventional medicine. So more about chronic inflammation, things like somebody will have cardiovascular problems. They will have problems like diabetes, type 2 diabetes. They will start having problem with their brain because the inflammation has gone to their brain. They will have immunological problems because the inflammation has affected the immune system. So it's like a big fire ready to explode.
So chronic inflammation can lead to serious diseases, that you're trying to say?
Definitely, definitely.
And what are the symptoms of chronic inflammation?
Chronic inflammation, like I said, you would not notice it when you're still young because you can have lots of things, you can eat lots of things, but it's further down the track. If you don't take care of your health, this is where you start having chronic inflammation, and it can develop in pain in the knees, for example. It can start with other problems like musculoskeletal problems. It can have issues like, a simple food that you are eating that can okay, I can't eat that anymore. I used to eat a lot of it, but I can't eat that anymore because my body can't adapt with it, So there are a lot of problems that starts to arise, but we don't notice it until it gets to a stage that we need to do something about it.
You've mentioned earlier that inflammation is like the fire. So how do we control that fire?
Okay. The way we control the fire is we address the inflammation. We get to the root cause of the inflammation. So you don't have to wait for you to develop a disease, for example. You don't have to develop type 2 diabetes before you look after your health. You cut down on the sugars, that kind of example, And it's also important to balance our pH level. So that's why it's important to make sure that our body is on a base level rather than acid or too alkaline.
What is pH exactly, pH
Yes.
level?
pH is actually the potential of hydrogen. Hydrogen. And it helps you kind of know if your body is sitting at acid or is it too alkaline. So the acidity and alkalinity of the body. Okay, so what we need to do is to make sure that we are sitting at the right pH. What I do in my clinic, I use a pH strip that we dip in urine, and then we measure the acidity or the alkalinity of that particular urine test. And if it's sitting at below 6 or 5 and 6, anything below 7, your body is in an acid state. Remember what I said. Inflammation is having an acid body. So if your acid shows, your pH test, shows that you are sitting at acid, it means that you have a lot of inflammation in your body. If you are sitting at above 7.6 to going up, you are in an alkalinity level, and that's not good either. So sitting at either acid or alkaline, it's not good. You need to be at 7.3, 7.5. So 7.3 is the ideal pH that you need to be on to know that your body is doing the work that it needs to do.
What normally causes the pH level to be abnormal?
Food. I can give you a few examples. Is that okay with you? Yeah. So a few things that causes our body. First of all, I like to talk about our lifestyle, our sedentary lifestyle. We don't exercise enough. We don't move enough. Stress level. We live in a society that's constantly being stressed. Kind of like, for me, I use stress as being a tiger chasing you. And we constantly have this tiger behind us.
Yes.
So we have to kind of tell the tiger, give us a break. We need to focus. We need to think of our health, which is very important, and then reduce the stress, which create an acid body. There are other things as well. We eat a lot of junk food. We eat out most of the time, and we don't consume enough fresh vegetables, fresh green vegetables. And we drink a lot of soft drinks, alcohol, tea, coffee. All this creates a lot of inflammation hence an acid body. And it's very important. That's what I said. It's crucial in order to have a good pH level, which normally sits at 7.3, for us to have a good body and not having pain. And I want to talk about how it can help with our body and how we can prevent that and how to balance the pH. We need to drink more water. Something that we've been told so many times. Our parents tell us, you need to drink more water. But this is something that we don't take the time to drink. Need more water. We need to limit and avoid drinks like alcohol, like soft drinks, teas, coffees. We need to avoid things like gluten, sugar, dairy. We got to be careful with these things. We need to have more vegetable, like I said, and reduce animal protein. We need also to have more green juices, more herbal teas, that kind of thing that will help us.
And these are the natural ways, therefore, to bring the pH to a balance.
To bring it to a balance and thus not having an inflamed body.
What are the foods that actually bring acid to our body? Tell us more about it.
Yes, the food that I've just mentioned are coffee, teas, things like junk food. If we eat a lot of salty stuff or sugary stuff, this will create an acid body.
But we do need acid and alkaline both in our body, right?
Definitely.
So what are the good acid that we need to have in our body, you know?
Yes.
What are the food that we can eat to get the good acid?
Okay,
You
citrus fruits. These are our acid fruits. Anything citrus, your orange, your mandarin, your grapefruits, these are the things that to incorporate. And I'll also have a list where I like to have a balance of everything. So I will do, when my patient will come and see me, I will look at how to balance their acid. Maybe once a week, have an acid food and have more of your alkaline food rather than your acid food. And nowadays, because most of the food that we consume has a lot of acid, so it's not very difficult to find them. It's the alkaline one that we need to incorporate more
yes,
into a diet.
exactly. What are they, in fact?
The alkaline ones? The alkaline ones would be your vegetable, will be your juices, your smoothies, will be things like your apple. An apple is more alkaline. Okay, so you had to have more of this. A potato, for example, will be more on your acid scale. So you need to avoid them maybe once a month. Have your potatoes and eat
Once a
it.
month.
And maybe eat more of your alkaline food, but balance them up. Okay, like I said, gluten is acid, so try not to have gluten as much as possible. But in my book, and what I say to all my patients is, we need to remove it because gluten is not the gluten that it used to be.
Cordelia, how can we incorporate more alkalizing lifestyle? That is, any activities that may help us to reduce our stress level?
Yeah, sure. Things that we can do is meditation, have a good night's sleep. So a good sleep regime is very important. We need to have things like naps during the day. If you feel like you need a 30 minutes nap, go for it. Relax. I say to mothers with little kids, you can't get away from your kids? Go and hide yourself in the bathroom for 15 minutes. That's a good relaxing, alkalizing things that you can do. Exactly. Because, sometimes kids, they take over our lives and mommy, they want this, they want that. And mommy doesn't have a break, or daddies, for example. So it's very important to actually, like I said to them, and they laugh at it when I say it, but it's true. Spend 15 minutes to yourself. Have a nap, have rest, sleep better, eat better, laugh. If you don't have anybody, just watch a comedy show and just laugh, Laughter is the great medicine, and it helps the muscles as well. I love laughing, and I laugh at my own jokes sometimes. And being optimistic is very important, You have a different focus on life. That's the main thing in life, You're breathing, the way you breathe. You don't breathe from your shoulders. You breathe from your tummy, okay? All this is very important because when you breathe from your shoulders, you are releasing too much oxygen. And remember, our body needs oxygen, okay? So if you're breathing from your tummy, you're doing your breathing exercise, you are keeping that oxygen into your body, which your body need. So that's something else. If you don't have enough oxygen, your body causes inflammation.
Cordelia, would you say that stress is one of the main cause of most of the disease that we have?
Definitely. And like I said before, Koyo, Stress, like I used to use the analogy of the tiger behind you, it's constantly behind you. Even if you're relaxing, you're having a meal, you still think of the tiger behind you. And when you are stressed, you release what we call a hormone called cortisol. And cortisol is your fight and flight. It's only when you are in danger that you need to be releasing it. But when we are in constant state of stress, we constantly release cortisol. And cortisol is not going to be good in the long run. Do you know why? Because cortisol have an effect on blood sugar. So if you're constantly having a release of cortisol, you increase your blood sugar. And women coming to an age, maybe another program I can talk about it, but I just want to mention it in passing, that when you go through menopause and you release too much cortisol, you are affected when it comes to your blood sugar. No wonder a lot of women going through menopause develop type 2 diabetes. These are what the research are showing.
You mentioned type 2 diabetes.
Type 2
explain
diabetes.
to us what exactly
Type 2
it is?
diabetes is when insulin, your body can't control insulin. First of all, you become insulin resistance because the sugar doesn't get to the cell that it needs to go because the lock is deformed, kind of like we're using the glucose as the key and the insulin as the lock, so it doesn't get through the lock, and then it circulates in the blood, and it causes type 2 diabetes.
Cordelia, most of us have heard the term of gut health.
Yes.
And to keep it in a good standing is in fact desirable and advantageous to our overall health. But what does it truly mean to have a healthy gut?
Okay, let me explain about gut because maybe some people won't understand what gut is. Gut is your digestive system. So it starts from your mouth and it ends in your anus. Okay, so when you go to poop. So it's very important to have the control of a good digestive system. I will talk a bit about gut. I will mention a lot about gut because that's what it means, digestive system. So gut is like an ecosystem. Everybody needs to live in harmony in an ecosystem. Or I like also to use the analogy of a garden. So if you have a beautiful garden with flowers, I suppose you've got a beautiful garden at home, Koyo.
Yes.
So it's got lovely flowers in it. You can't just have roses in it. You got to have other things in it to make it a beautiful garden. You can't just have weeds in your garden. It's got to be beautiful. A garden, when you look at it and say, oh, that's a lovely garden. So your body, your gut is like a garden. Now, the problem is the injuries that we cause to our body, it helps our garden to get better, or our garden get destroyed. And then you don't have any lovely flowers anymore. You've only got weed. And that's not a nice garden to look at. Our community in our body, they all work together for our physical and the environment as well. We have 500 to 1,000 species of bacteria living inside of us. I'll give you an example. My arm is my cell in my body. The rest of my body is bacteria. So imagine, we need to take care of them. So having a good, healthy ecosystem makes a happy, healthy us.
So the bacteria controls us?
The bacteria, in a way, you can say that it does control us because if we don't feed them the right stuff, they're going to eat us. Okay? So if you don't feed them food, like fiber, I'll give you an example, like fiber. It's actually food for them, not food for us. Because us human, we can't digest fiber. It's their food for them to survive, for them to help us have a good immune system, for us to have enough vitamin B in our body, for them to control everything from our enzymes, from things in our body to make us work well. And also, in our body, we have some good and some bad bacteria.
Yes. Exactly. Explain to us what is the good and bad bacteria and how does it help for our overall health?
Definitely. Let me start with our friendly bacteria, okay? Because we tend to have a little less these days, so it's important to talk about them. So what they do is they control our digestion, our metabolism, and they prevent us from having things like cancer. They produce vitamins. They provide some beneficial nutrients for our body. Like I said, we feed them and then they use that, they metabolize them and they make us healthy and happy. They work in a they have a symbiotic relationship with us, the host. Okay, like I was saying, if we don't feed them the right food, they're gonna eat us. Okay, so if they're not getting the right food, they're gonna eat us. They start with a wall of our gut, so they start to eat us. They regulate inflammation. Remember we talked about inflammation at the beginning? That's what they do. They reduce inflammation. They modulate our immune system, so they help us to have better immune system. And the gut health is at the center of a healthy life. So if we don't have good health, we don't have a lovely garden, we're in trouble. So we need to tend to this lovely garden inside of us, because this garden inside is the answer to many unrelated health problems. So not a good gut, not a happy gut, not a happy you. Let me talk about the nasty ones now, because it's very important to mention them as well. And I like to call them the bad guys because they're nasty. What do? They produce fat that promote allergies. Do you know a lot of kids these days, they've got allergies? I remember when I was working in Australia in a clinic, a lot of kids, my little kids were 3, 2, 4, that kind of age, that was coming to me with a lot of allergies. And asthma, a lot of kids have asthma, psoriasis, eczema, kind of like patches on their skin. It produces inflammation throughout the body. It can affect the brain also. How does it affect the brain? Because there's a nerve that connects our gut to our brain. So if that nerve in our gut doesn't work well, it affects the brain. Remember I talked about inflammation of the brain?
Yes.
This is where all started, from the gut. And it push out the friendly ones as well. It's like, I need to have more of the territory rather than you having more of the territory. So imagine if you don't have enough good bacteria, friendly bacteria, the nasty ones will overtake the friendly ones. And this is where problems starts to arise. You start to have a toxic environment. I'll give you an example again. When you don't empty your bin for 2 weeks, for example, imagine the smell that bin will be. We can't smell it from inside of us, but the smell is horrible, So that's what happened. It creates a toxic environment. When we eat a lot of junk food, it makes the bad bacteria grow. And instead of having this symbiosis, we now have dysbiosis, which is a harmful environment. I also want to mention autoimmune conditions, because when your immune system is affected, remember I was saying that the gut controls the immune system, controls the brain. So when we have an immune system that's always active, that always fights infection, inflammation, that kind of thing, we develop what we call autoimmune conditions. Autoimmune condition is when your immune system can't take it anymore and it starts to attack itself. So maybe next time in a different program, I can talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Why is gut health so important to our overall health and well-being?
It is important because it controls everything. A few weeks ago, I was reading a book, and the book said the inside track. I like to call it the second brain. So we always thought that the brain was the one controlling the whole body, right? But it's actually the gut that controls the brain, that controls our system. Okay. And also I like to say that, we need to take care of the gut. So if we don't take care of it, further down the track, it affects our brain.
What is the sign of an unhealthy gut then?
Okay. Things will start to happen in the mouth. Maybe you will have some bad breath. Maybe you will start having gastritis, stomach lining starting to be affected. And the more inflammation you have, the lining wall of the gut starts to erode. And when it's erode, it makes gap. So if I can illustrate that, this is the wall of your gut. It has a bit of a space. It's not joined together. So the wall needs to be like that, okay? Little things comes in, little things goes out. But when you have inflammation in the gut, can you see the difference? It starts to have bigger gap in the gut. And then bigger things can come in and bigger things can come out. So we're talking here bacteria, for example, can come out, and anything can come out, So we need to bring the lining back into where it needs to be. Because or else you are constantly in this inflammatory state.
Cordelia, what are the food that we should consume in order to have a good ecosystem from within?
Yes. Okay, like I mentioned before, fiber. Fiber is very important. And fiber, we find it in our green leafy vegetables. We find it in apples, for example. Fiber is very important. Like I said, it's food for the bacteria. We call it prebiotic for the bacteria, the probiotic that they need. We need fermented foods. Fermented foods like sauerkraut. The German loves their sauerkraut, and it's easy to make. Cabbage, carrot, a bit of salt, mix it all, put it in a jar, and you have a lovely sauerkraut. Kombucha drinks that's made with fermented. And we have other things that Japanese like their kefirs, and they like their kimchis as well. Kefirs is fermented coconut or fermented water that you can make and drink it, and your bacteria is going to thank you for that. There's also things like slippery arm. There's things like your prebiotic will be your everyday food, like garlic, for example, onions, tomatoes. Tomatoes, I have to emphasize that if you have a lot of inflammation, you can't cook your tomatoes, you got to have it raw. So your tomato will be in your salad, for example. You can have bananas, you can have green leafy vegetables. Again, with banana, if you're a type 2 diabetic, avoid banana, maybe once a week, maybe once a month with the banana. Green leafy vegetables, like I said, and probiotics as well is very important. But here I have to also mention that you can't take any type of probiotic, okay? So every strain is different. So that's why a person like myself, when you come into my consultation, this is what I will give you the advice on what are the strains that you need to take.
We are actually drawing towards the end of this episode, but before that, Cordelia, any message or any advice you would like to give to our audience to encourage them to adopt a healthier lifestyle?
Yes, Koyel, thank you very much for that. I want to mention two things. Food is information. So when you eat, it sends messages to your body. So if you're eating the wrong food, it will send the wrong message. So when you're eating the right food, it sends the right messages to your body. It helps your mood, it helps your behavior, it helps your immune system, and it also makes you feel happy, you know? And my take-home message will be control the inflammation, balance your pH, take care of your gut.
Thank you so much, Cordelia. It was such a pleasure to have you on the set tonight and talk about inflammation and know more about the gut health.
Thank you so much, Koyel, for having me and for your audience for their kind listening words. And if you need to know more, just contact me.
Dear viewers, we have now come to the end of this episode. Thank you for your time. We hope to catch you next week at the same time, same channel. Have a great evening.